The third and final season of Picard is heating up, so continue to join us every week as we explore each episode and go through all the details you may have missed.
I am Worf, son of Mo.
And please stay tuned to the end to get a special inside look at this episode directly from the mouth of showrunner Terry MATALAS himself, so you don't want to miss this episode. Last week's episode ended with us learning that Captain Picard has a son. The confirmation from Beverly has Picard leaping into action as the Titan fires at the Shrike and then takes off for the Nebula. Some of the things we hope to learn from this episode include how will the Titan keep the Shrike from taking Jack? We also need to know Jack's story and why Beverly never told Jean-Luc about him. We also want to know why Worf was Raffi's handler and what has he been up to the past 20 years or so.
I fear that was only the beginning.
This episode begins with the Titan running from the Shrike into the Nebula and being damaged. Shaw is in charge of the bridge, and Riker suggests they hide since they are outmatched by the more powerful ship. Losing the sensors, the Titan is flying blind.
Send somebody down to look out the goddamn back window.
We then enter a flashback of before with a much younger Picard and Riker. In fact, a 22 years younger Picard and Riker. The year is 2381, and this scene takes place 2 years after the events of Nemesis. They are in Guinan's bar, and we get a quick establishing shot of a futuristic Los Angeles. The old friends are toasting the birth of Riker's son Thaddeus and parenthood. The de-aging in this scene is convincing, especially with Riker, and while it's difficult to cover an aged voice, overall Picard does seem to have more vitality. Picard cracks off a joke that Thaddeus will be just fine thanks to his mother Deanna, and we all have a nice laugh. This rapport between the two characters is something this series badly needed more of. In this scene, Riker is the captain of the Titan, and he tells Picard the story of how he was hailed during Deanna's delivery, and on the way to see what was wrong, he shares how he thought he was going to lose his son, and in that moment he became a father. All this happens in 17 seconds in the turbolift going down to sickbay.
It took 17 seconds to get down there.
It's a wonderful discussion about what it's like to be a new parent, which is obvious foreshadowing, not only to what Picard may be feeling now that he has a son, but also about what you will do to save those you love. It's at this moment that Riker gets a communique, and we get our first look at Deanna, who, unlike Will, is not having wistful nostalgic thoughts on parenthood, and it ends the short meeting between old friends.
I'm sorry, Zadi. I'll be right there.
Bring the whiskey.
Back to present day on the Titan. With sensors down, the crew is trying to get a visual of the Shrike, and it will be 2 hours before they will be warp capable. Shaw is in charge of his bridge, but he just keeps getting bad news. We see his compassion as he dismisses 2 of his bridge crew who have been on long watches. Av Verum Corpus 618 begins to play, and it is an eerie reminder of the eternal father strong to save him we hear during the 1995 movie Crimson Tide, where an American submarine has been damaged by an enemy Russian sub and is sinking. Is this potential foreshadowing to come? We already know showrunner Terry MATALAS did share there is a Crimson Tide moment that happens between Riker and Picard during this season.
Well, that's fun. Anyone else want to throw more weird at me?
We then cut to Seven's quarters, where we see a small die-cast model of USS Voyager, a nice Roddenberry for fans, and it makes sense since Seven would likely have warm feelings about her first Federation vessel and its crew. The music we were hearing on the bridge is coming from her quarters, while she appears to be keeping busy but is frustrated because she is confined to quarters. If you'll recall, the captain in Crimson Tide was also confined to his quarters, if we're looking for similarities. Ensign LaForge has come to check on her, and she tells Seven that
people didn't think I belonged either. She's here because Starfleet couldn't say no to Geordi LaForge's daughter.
And then she tells Seven,
Shaw may call you insubordinate for helping yours, but my dad wouldn't.
This seems to cheer Seven up as Sydney calls her
Commander Seven.
In medical, Beverly is helping the wounded, and Jack is very protective of her as the Titan's medical officer talks down to Dr. Crusher, telling her it would take her more time to explain how to use the new technology than do it herself. This lady just became our least favorite Starfleet medical officer, and that's a lot considering our first season murder doctor. Beverly, of course, ignores her, and we get our first meeting of words between Picard and Crusher. In this scene, we learn that 2 months before she left the Enterprise during shore leave on Casparia Prime, they conceived Jack. This is an excellent back and forth between the two actors. You believe the pain they both feel, and as they joust back and forth, they seem justified in their positions. Beverly wanted to tell him, but every time she tried, some dangerous incident would occur that kept her from telling him. She finally realized it would always be this way. She wanted to protect her son, so she chose not to tell him. She also thought Jean-Luc would never give up the life he was living. Jean-Luc strikes back and tells her she made the choice for him. She doesn't know how he would have responded, and she cut him out of
the biggest decision of my life.
He says, "What could have been had I known? What could I be? A father? A husband?"
I know now I would never have been my father.
And you can see the anguish on his face that he wished he could have learned that 20 years earlier. Beverly argues,
I thought I could protect mine. I didn't know if I could protect yours.
You can understand her thinking, but it becomes apparent that she is now questioning the decision.
If you had told me, it all might have been different.
In the next scene, Jack looks agitated while his mom is talking with Picard. Riker tries to have a heart-to-heart with him, and some of it seems to sink in. We learn that Beverly missed her friends. We love this line where Riker tells Jack, "Feel free to call me Captain." This is just another example of how this show puts professionalism before feelings.
The bigger the legend, the more disappointing the reality.
Back to Beverly and Picard, she explains the message she sent and told him he was the only one she could trust. She thinks Vadic wants something to do with Jean-Luc, even though she's trying to get Jack. We also learn why Jack has an accent.
He went to school in London, never shook it. Maybe it's in his DNA.
Picard asks her if he and Jack didn't deserve a chance, and she tells him when he was old enough, she did tell him and encouraged it, but Jack didn't want to have anything to do with his father. Picard moves to focus on the danger at hand, but Will encourages him to talk to Jack. Picard seems to think it's irreparable and goes to apologize to Shaw.
I owe the ship's captain an apology.
Next, the Shrike finds the Titan even though it should have been impossible and continues to damage the ship. Shaw is wounded and transfers command to Captain Riker.
You got us into this. You are gonna get us out.
Riker immediately goes into action. After all these years, it's great to see Riker in command of a starship. We get a great joke where Picard tells Riker to call him number 1.
I think it might be time you called me number 1.
Back to Raffi, we learn that Starfleet believes the attack on the Starfleet Recruitment Center was an isolated incident. She hears Les Troyan's Opera 29 playing, and she approaches what she thinks is an intruder with a phase pistol. We learn it is Worf doing Makbara, an exercise of Klingon martial arts. He dispatches Raffi quickly, and we get Worf's official introduction as he lists all of his accomplishments and then asks her if she wants chamomile tea and does she take sugar. Our Worf is there, but there is something different about him. He explains that he now tries to access calm as often as fire, and that he's essentially been working on himself. Worf is not with Starfleet, but his goal aligns with theirs. Raffi has a difficult moment, feeling like she's thrown her life away. But Worf tells her she has the heart of a warrior, and he warns her that something is coming. He tries to dismiss her, but she insists that she is going with him. He explains to her the plan, and it's all about kicking butt.
You and I will track this individual together.
Back on the Titan, a disagreement has begun between Picard and Riker. Will wants to hide, but Picard wants to fight. Riker ultimately gets to make the decision. We begin to wonder what might be playing into the reasons for these very different tactics.
Of course, I'm open to your input.
In sickbay, Captain Shaw is not doing well. Beverly comes over to help and discovers he has internal bleeding. Jack comes over to help, and Shaw struggles, asking Jack how Vadic keeps finding them. Jack notices blood on the floor and quickly leaves.
How does she keep finding us?
Back on the bridge, we learn that the nebula is an unknown anomaly that they can't go through. Riker turns the ship around and heads for the edge of the nebula. Picard seems frustrated or confused by his decision. Jack makes it to the bridge, but is turned around by security. The Titan gets to the edge of the nebula and prepares to go to warp. It's at this moment the Shrike is on top of them as Vadic readies a device. We finally learn what the weapon is that's in center position. She launches a portal in front of the Titan, and as they go through it, they come out of another portal right in front of the Shrike. Despite multiple attempts to escape, Vadic keeps bringing them right back in front of her. The Titan has no defense against it. This is unlike any weapon we've ever seen in Star Trek, and the graphics are impressive. Huge shout out to the special effects team for this work. Picard tells Riker she's corralling them to cripple them and now is the time to fight. But Riker refuses and orders the Titan back into the nebula.
Sir, she's pulled us back in again.
Back on MATALAS Prime, Worf and Raffi are trying to blend in. After some witty repartee, they find their mark and begin to chase. Worf catches the human they are chasing and body slams him into a table.
Beheadings are on Wednesdays.
Back on the Titan, the Shrike is chasing the ship back into the nebula. Jack comes to Seven's quarters and asks her about a tactic the Fenris Rangers use called blood in the water. He says that's what must be happening here now. Somehow they are leaving breadcrumbs for Vadic to follow. Seven thinks about it for a second and realizes they are tracking for Tyrium, which insulates the warp coils. Jack says they must have a leak. He and Seven leave, but security stops them and Jack knocks him out. They discover the Verterium is leaking and it has been sabotaged. It does appear the Titan has a saboteur. But the Titan has bigger problems. They are getting close to the center of the nebula, which has a strong central gravitational well that would not be good for the ship if they get pulled into it. Picard wants to use the fact that they know what's going on but Vadic doesn't to set a trap for the Shrike. But Riker wants to use the opportunity to run because he doesn't want to risk the crew. Jean-Luc finally loses his temper with Riker after he suggests Picard's judgment is affected because he has a son on board. Riker snaps that he is taking the ship and her crew home and it's final.
I'm taking the ship and her crew home.
We go back to engineering where a creepy-looking crewman attacks Jack and seems to have superhuman strength. Then Jack punches him and his face changes shape under the Force. This is no human.
Warning, dangerous level of Verterium exposure.
Back on MATALAS Prime, Raffi is roughly questioning their prisoner. Worf uses his questioning of the prisoner to point out his past flaws and Raffi's current ones.
Irrational. Violent.
But things change with perspective. He says anger is the enemy. What they're trying to find out is who broke into Daystrom and stole the weapon we now see on the Shrike.
Your anger is your enemy. We are all the same.
I think I feel my chamomile tea coming back up.
Back on the Titan, Jack, struggling to get up from the floor, has a vision while looking up at Seven. He sees what looks like purple vines growing on the walls, and he sees a red cloud, then a door that opens but we can't see what is on the other side. Picard is unexpectedly called to sickbay about Jack, and suddenly, like Riker all those years before when Thaddeus was born, Jean-Luc is in the turbolift, heading down to sickbay not knowing if his son is dying. He told Riker all those years ago, that was the moment you became a parent. Will the same thing happen to Picard now? Beverly is desperately trying to shock Jack back to life as Picard arrives and he does pull through. Jean-Luc is visibly relieved. Back with Worf and Raffi, they learn the weapon was stolen to distract Starfleet against something more dangerous that was stolen. But this is no human either. Worf finally confirms what we have been thinking. This and the crewmen on the Titan are changelings.
Tell me, how long have you been away from the Great Link?
We learn from the Deep Space Nine episode The Search Part 2 that the Great Link was the intermingling of many changelings in their natural liquid form and the foundation of their society, providing meaning for the changelings' existence. The last we knew of the changelings, Odo, a fan favorite and changeling from Deep Space Nine, had cured the Great Link of a disease. So whatever could have them back in the Alpha Quadrant messing with Starfleet again?
When were you expecting me? Not for another 300 years.
Back on the Titan, Picard once again confronts Riker about being fearful of loss and that it makes them weak. Riker reminds Picard he is the captain of the Titan and ignores him.
It's not working!
Sit down, Admiral.
Back on MATALAS, Worf tells the changeling he knows his kind. The changeling tells them their worlds are on the verge of destruction and he changes form to try to escape, but Worf disintegrates him. Back on the Titan, Jack tells Seven there is a changeling on board. As the crewmen on the Titan plant some sort of device on the ship, we hear Worf explain the history of the changelings. He tells about how the Dominion War ended, but a terrorist faction broke away unable to accept defeat. Odo contacted Worf and let him know about the group, but Starfleet never recognized it because it would reignite the Dominion War.
You and I, Rafaela, are now partners.
Back on the bridge of the Titan, the Shrike's trail is cold, and just as Seven tells Riker there is a changeling on board, there is an explosion, and the Titan loses the ability to jump to warp. Picard tells Riker to turn and fight, that they either fight or die, and Riker finally orders everyone to attack. And just as it seems the Titan may have the upper hand, the Shrike launches the portal weapon, and the Titan's own weapons are redirected and end up damaging the Titan until it is dead in the water and sinking towards the gravity well. Riker angrily blames Picard for what happened. The episode ends with Riker telling Picard,
"Remove yourself from the bridge. You've just killed us all."
The reveal of the Changelings is sure to keep Star Trek fans talking all week and going back to look at Deep Space Nine episodes. What is this Changeling terrorist group's ultimate plans? How will Picard engage his new son? And most importantly, what was stolen from Daystrom that can be worse than the portal weapon? We have all these questions as the Titan continues to fall into the gravity well, yet again reminiscent of Crimson Tide, when the submarine is sinking powerlessly to its own crushing demise. And now, 3 episodes in, we still want to know where Geordi is and whoever that is that looks like Data. All will be revealed as the showrunner and his team have left no stone unturned and every plot point earned. Are you feeling that original Star Trek loving feeling? If so, give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing, as we'll be doing this every week. And don't forget to pay close attention to the end credits, as things hidden there are spoilers in plain sight the whole time. You just didn't know it until now. And stay tuned, because in a moment we are going to share with you thoughts on episode 3 directly from the mouth of showrunner Terry Matalas. But first, what do you think? Did this episode of Star Trek Picard Season 3 lock you in for the rest of the season, or do you need to see more? Tell us what you think, and let's talk about it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and want to hear more discussions about this topic and others just like it, please join us over at our other channel, the Popcast Unleashed, where we'll be conducting interviews with your favorite Star Trek personalities. Also, please consider supporting the channel and get your own Worf-inspired Klingon Empire graphic design from the amazing artists at mixtees.com. Get 20% off your purchase by using coupon code THEPOPCAST. The link is in the description below. And now, Star Trek Picard Season 3 showrunner Terry Matalas.
We knew we wanted them to have stolen this really unique weapon. And it just came from these brilliant writers in the writers' room pitching different ideas of what it could be. The idea of the portal weapon was really cool, but then we talked to visual effects. We're like, could we pull that off? And these big long shots where the portal opens and the ship comes through and it comes out on the other side. It seemed like I'd seen that in Star Trek before. I'm pretty excited to see how audiences are going to respond to that.
The actors responded incredibly. You know, the shock of these people who've been around for decades, have seen it all, and like, holy shit, we're in trouble.
Yeah. I think it was the story of two fathers who, one angry and one hurt on the bridge of a starship. And that's at its base core what it was. And then it's also strategy. it's just submarine strategy. We never got to see Riker in command, what he would do as a captain and how Picard might disagree. So it was a really, we hope, interesting dynamic to see on before it's all over, to what these two might be like this late in life. You know, the mentor and the protege now on equal footing, not seeing eye to eye when the stakes are high and lives are at stake. It seemed really cool. That was a terrible soundbite.